The thing wearing my grandfather's face grinned at me from the edge of the arroyo, its jaw unhinging like a snake's. And in a voice of cracking bones and dry sand, it whispered my childhood nickname. Nightbound Bloodline presents. What lingers in the forgotten places of this world does not always hide. Sometimes it watches, sometimes it learns, and sometimes it decides to wear a skin that is not its own. The stories you are about to hear are first-hand testimonies. They come from truck drivers, nurses, and veterans, people who stepped into a silent corner of the map and found something waiting there that knew their names. Their accounts vary, but the core terror remains the same, an intelligence that is ancient, malevolent, and profoundly wrong. Listen closely. 5 real Skinwalker and lizard people monster stories. Our first story comes from the vast Navajo Nation, a land of stark beauty and deep, respected traditions. It was sent to us by a man we'll call Thomas. He is a 42-year-old long-haul trucker, a man whose life is measured in highway miles and diesel fuel. He is, by his own admission, a skeptic. He deals in tangible cargo and delivery logs, not ghost stories. But what happened to him on a remote stretch of service road near Monument Valley stripped that skepticism away, leaving only a primal, chilling certainty. This is his account. Story 1. The Road That Watched Back. My name's Thomas. I've been driving the Southwest routes for 18 years. I don't believe in ghost stories. I believe in blown tires, bad coffee, and logbooks. But what I saw, what I heard, I can't file that under mechanical failure. It's in a different ledger altogether. It was last November. I'd taken a private contract, hauling specialized equipment to a remote communications site. The GPS was useless, so I was following hand-drawn directions from the dispatcher. I turned off the main highway onto this dirt and gravel service road, just as the sun was dipping below the mesa. The world went from orange to purple to black real fast. No moon, just a billion stars, cold and sharp. The road was terrible, more of a suggestion than a road. My rig was rocking side to side, and I had to keep my speed down to a crawl. That's the first thing that got to me, the silence. Out there, you expect the crunch of your own tires, the engine, maybe some coyotes. But this was a thick, woolly quiet. It felt absorbed, like the desert itself was holding its breath. Then came the smell. I had my window cracked, and it rolled in, a mix of wet dog, stale copper, and something else, like ozone after a lightning strike, but rotten. It made my eyes water. I figured maybe a dead cow was somewhere downwind. I kept driving. About 10 minutes later, my headlights caught a figure standing maybe 100 yards ahead, just off the side of the road. My first thought was, hiker in trouble. But my gut clenched. The posture was all wrong. It was too still. It was tall, way too tall for a normal man, and skinny in a way that seemed stretched. It was just a black cutout against the starfield. I slowed down, almost stopping. As my high beams hit it directly, I got my first clear look. It wasn't a hiker. It was naked, or looked it. Its skin, it wasn't skin. It was a gray, leathery hide, like an elephant's, but tight over a skeletal frame. Long, spindly arms hung past its knees. And the head, God, the head was elongated, almost bullet-shaped, with no visible ears or hair. Its eyes reflected the light with a bright, amber-yellow shine, like a wolf's. But these were set front-facing, like a person's. It didn't move. It just stared, not at my truck, at me, through the windshield. I could feel the weight of that stare in my teeth. My foot slammed down on the accelerator. The wheels spun on the gravel before grabbing. As I lurched forward, the thing, it didn't run. It turned its head to track me, smooth and mechanical. And then it smiled. Its mouth split open far too wide, showing rows of small, needle-like teeth. No emotion, just a display. I watched it shrink in my rearview mirror, expecting it to vanish. It didn't. For a full minute, I could see those 2 pinpricks of amber light, just watching me go. Then they were gone. I was shaking so bad I thought I'd veer off the road. I didn't stop until I hit the paved highway 20 miles later. I pulled over, threw up my dinner onto the gravel, and sat there sweating despite the cold. I reported nothing. Who would I call? What would I say? I delivered the load. I never took a contract out that way again. I've replayed it 1,000 times in my head, trying to make it a mangy coyote, a trick of the shadows. But I know what I saw. It was intelligent. It was observing. And out there, in that ancient silence, I wasn't on the top of the food chain anymore. I was just something that passed by, a creature of leathery hide and predatory observation, standing sentinel on a forgotten road. Thomas's account echoes a theme we will hear again: the intelligence behind the gaze. Our next story shifts the landscape from the desert to the dense, damp forests of the Pacific Northwest, but the violation of the familiar remains just as profound. This account comes from a woman we'll call Mara. She is a 34-year-old registered nurse, a person trained in logic and biology. She contacted us not for validation, but as a warning. For her, the horror did not wear the skin of a stranger. It wore the skin of her neighbor. Story 2. The Thing in Mr. Henderson's Skin. I'm Mara. I work the night shift in the ER. I deal in blood, broken bones, and hard facts. My worldview is built on charts and vital signs. Until last spring, I would have told you that's a way to chansoa, like Skinwalkers, were just cultural metaphors for mental illness or predators. I'm not so arrogant anymore. I live in a rural wooded area outside Seattle. My nearest neighbor was an elderly man named Mr. Henderson, about 300 yards through the trees. A sweet, quiet man who bred corgis. We'd wave, exchange Christmas cards. That was it. It started with the dogs. His dogs. For 3 nights straight, I heard them howling, not barking, but this long, panicked, keening howl that started at sunset and didn't stop until dawn. It was unnerving. On the 4th evening, I decided to check on him. It was just getting dark, that thick, green twilight under the cedars. I walked the familiar path. The forest was dead silent except for my footsteps. No birds, no squirrels. That oppressive silence Thomas described. And the smell hit me halfway there. That same coppery, wet fur stench, but underneath it, something sweetly rotten, like spoiled meat. I saw Mr. Henderson standing on his back porch, silhouetted against the yellow light of his open kitchen door. He was just standing there, facing the woods, not moving. Relief washed over me. "Mr. Henderson," I called out. "Are you okay?" "Your dogs are." He turned around. The porch light fell on him. It was his face, his clothes, the same red plaid shirt he always wore. But everything else was wrong. His posture was slumped, shoulders hitched up high near his ears. His arms hung limp, his fingers slightly curled. And his eyes, they were blank. Not vacant, just blank, like painted marbles. No recognition, no life. He opened his mouth. His jaw moved stiffly, up and down, before any sound came out. And then his voice, usually soft and wavery, was a dry, papery rasp. "The dogs are fine, Mara." He said my name, but it was wrong. The cadence was off, like someone had recorded his voice and was playing it back slowly through a bad speaker. "You should go home now." My nursing training screamed stroke, neurological event. But my primal brain screamed something else entirely. This wasn't a medical condition. This was a bad replication. A thing was piloting Mr. Henderson's body, and it hadn't learned how to work the controls properly. I took a step back. As I did, his head tilted to the side, a sharp, bird-like motion no human neck should make. A slow, wide smile spread across his face, stretching the skin taut, not reaching those dead eyes. From inside the house, one of the corgis let out a short, sharp yelp and then was silent. I didn't run. I walked backwards, slowly, keeping my eyes on him. He just stood there, smiling that empty smile, tracking me until the trees blocked my view. Then I ran. I locked every door and window and sat with all the lights on until my shift started. The next day, an ambulance was at Mr. Henderson's house. The official story was a massive stroke discovered by a concerned relative who called for a welfare check. He was transferred to a care facility out of state. I never saw him again, but I know what I saw on that porch. That wasn't Mr. Henderson. Something had put him on, and for a moment, it spoke to me. I don't walk in the woods at dusk anymore. And sometimes, when the wind is just right, I catch a whiff of wet fur and decay, and I wonder if it's still here, wearing something else. A stolen face, a voice that doesn't fit, and the chilling quiet of a pacified forest. Mara's story speaks to the ultimate violation, the corruption of the known. Our third account plunges us into the heart of a different kind of wilderness, the concrete and steel canyons beneath our cities. This comes from a man we'll call Leo, a 29-year-old structural engineer for the City Transit Authority. A rationalist, a man who trusts in blueprints and load-bearing calculations. His encounter occurred not under an open sky, but in the labyrinth of a place we all use but never truly see. Story 3. The Tunnel Census. I'm Leo. My job is to make sure things don't collapse. I deal in stress tests, material fatigue, and empirical data. The supernatural isn't a variable in my equations. Wasn't, I should say. This happened during a mandated inspection of a storm drain and utility tunnel network downtown. It's a system that's been expanded piecemeal for over a century, a honeycomb of brick, concrete, and narrow access shafts. My partner, Chris, and I were on the graveyard shift, minimizing disruption. We were about a quarter-mile in, our headlamps cutting cones in the absolute black. The air was cool, damp, smelling of stagnant water and wet concrete. Normal. Then we reached a junction where newer concrete met the old, hand-laid red brick from the 1800s. The smell changed. It became dry, dusty, like hot stones and lizard cage. And there was a sound, a faint, skittering rustle that echoed from the older tunnel branch. Chris joked about giant rats. I didn't laugh. The sound was too deliberate. Not frantic, purposeful. We proceeded, our lights probing the arched brick passage. That's when we saw the first marking. Scratched into the mortar, about eye level, was a series of vertical lines grouped in fives, like a tally. Dozens of them. Next to it was a crude, etched symbol, a jagged, lightning bolt shape inside a circle. The scratches were fresh, the exposed brick underneath still bright against the soot-stained surface. Chris reached out to touch it. Kids with spray paint, maybe, he muttered. From the darkness ahead, a voice answered. It was a whisper, but it carried like it was right next to my ear. Hissy, sibilant, with a strange double vibration behind it. It said, "Do not count what is not yours." We froze. Our headlamps swung forward, converging on the figure. It was crouched on a small ledge about 30 feet ahead. It was humanoid, but its proportions were off. The torso too long, the limbs thin and jointed wrong, like they had an extra bend. Its skin was a dull, mottled gray-green, visible in patches under what looked like tattered, dark rags. It was hairless. Its face was elongated, with a pronounced brow ridge and a slit for a mouth. But the eyes, they were large, completely black, and reflected our lights not with a shine, but by absorbing them, showing pinprick reflections deep within like distant stars. It didn't move. It just crouched there, one long-fingered hand resting on the brick wall next to another set of fresh tally marks. "Hello," Chris called out, his voice shaky. "This is a restricted area." The creature's head tilted. It made a sound, a rapid, clicking stutter, like stones being knocked together deep in its throat. Then it spoke again, the words clearer, more practiced. "You are in the deep places. You are part of the count now." It pushed off from the ledge. It didn't jump down. It scrambled across the curved brick wall, moving with impossible, spider-like speed, sticking to the vertical surface for a few horrifying seconds before dropping soundlessly into a shadowed side passage. The last thing I saw was the tip of a long, tapering tail vanish into the dark. We got out of there. Fast. We filed a report about vagrants and unsafe conditions. The tunnel was scheduled for a security review. I requested a transfer to above-ground projects. I've done research. Tally marks in tunnels are an old phenomenon, reported in cities worldwide. They're often dismissed as graffiti, but I've seen the census taker. I know what those marks are for. They're not counting people who enter. They're counting people who don't leave. And now, according to that hissing voice, we're part of that number. I avoid subways. I take the bus. And I never, ever look into dark corners for too long. A census of the lost, taken in the darkness beneath our feet. Leo's account suggests a system, a purpose to these entities that defies our understanding. Our fourth story returns us to the surface, to a vast, empty landscape where the veil between worlds is said to be tissue thin. This account comes from a former Marine, a man we'll call Reyes. He served 2 tours overseas. He knows the physiology of fear, the shape of a real threat. What he encountered on a solo hunting trip in the Uinta Basin challenged every tactical assessment he'd ever made. Story 4. The Patrol. Reyes, Sergeant, USMC, retired. I've been in situations where my life was measured in seconds and inches. I know what a hostile human looks like, what a dangerous animal looks like. This was neither. This was something operating on a different manual entirely. It was October. I was out for mule deer, deep in the basin. I'd set up a high blind on a rocky outcrop, overlooking a wide canyon. I'd been there since pre-dawn. The sun was just coming up, painting the cliffs in reds and golds. Beautiful, peaceful. That peace broke at 0630 hours. Below me, maybe 200 yards out, something stepped from the shadow of a juniper grove into the open scrub. My first thought, through the rifle scope, was wolf. But it was wrong. It was the size of a large man, but moving on all fours with a terrible, disjointed grace. Its fur was patchy, mangy, a sickly yellow-gray. Its spine was too pronounced, ridges of vertebrae pushing against the skin. As it lifted its head to scent the air, I saw its muzzle was too short, almost stubby, and its ears were rounded, not pointed. Then it stood up. It rose onto its hind legs in one fluid, unbroken motion. The anatomy was a nightmare. The legs bent backwards at the knee, like a bird's. Its arms were too long, ending in hands where fingers seemed to merge into thick, dark claws. It scanned the canyon, its head moving with a slow, mechanical precision. That's when I realized this was a patrol, a recon. It was checking its territory. My finger was off the trigger. Every instinct told me engaging was a catastrophic mistake. This wasn't prey. This was a soldier. It must have caught my scent or seen the glint of my scope. Its head snapped toward my position. The eyes. God, the eyes were a solid, glossy black, like obsidian. No pupil, no white. Just 2 pits of void. It locked onto me. I felt seen, comprehensively, in a way I never have. Not even under enemy surveillance. It didn't snarl. It didn't charge. It opened its mouth and let out a sound. Not a howl. It was a perfect, crystal-clear imitation of a human voice, a woman's voice, screaming for help. The scream echoed off the canyon walls, heart-wrenching and real. It was a recording, a lure. I stayed frozen. I didn't breathe. The military calls it protective coloration. You become part of the landscape. The thing watched my bluff for a full minute. Then the scream cut off. It dropped back to all fours, and in that broken-legged gait, it loped across the canyon floor and vanished into a crevice in the cliff face I hadn't even noticed. I stayed in that blind for 4 hours until the sun was high and blazing. I didn't track it. I didn't go near that crevice. I packed my gear and left the canyon. I've heard things mimic sounds to hunt. Parrots. Some cats. This was different. That scream wasn't just mimicry. It was psychological warfare. It was assessing my response, testing my protocols. I wasn't hunting that day. I was being evaluated by a superior predator. And I have no doubt that if I had moved, if I had tried to play the hero, I would have been added to the list of those who vanish in those canyons. Some things you don't engage. You survive, and you never, ever go back to their patrol route. A predator that uses empathy as a weapon, conducting a cold assessment in the morning light. Reyes's encounter speaks of a chilling, tactical intelligence. Our fifth and final story takes us to the crumbling edge of modern society, a dying roadside town. This account comes from a woman we'll call Anya, a 51-year-old long-distance bus driver. Her route is a ribbon of asphalt through emptiness, her passengers transient ghosts. She thought she'd seen every kind of strange the night roads had to offer. She was wrong. Story number 5, the last stop in Bajo Sangre. Name's Anya. I drive the Nightbird line from Phoenix to Albuquerque. My world is the dashboard glow, the snores from the back, and the yellow lines ticking by. You see things on the night road. Mirages. Animals in the headlights. Drifters. You learn not to stop. There's a fuel stop about halfway, a place called Bajo Sangre. It's not even a town anymore. Just a derelict gas station with one working pump, run by an old-timer named Gus. It's the only light for 50 miles. One night last February, a blizzard was coming in fast from the north. Whiteout conditions. I had 18 souls on board, including kids. Making it to Albuquerque was suicide. Bajo Sangre was my only option. I pulled the bus into the gravel lot next to the station. The place was dark, except for a single bulb over the pump. The sign was broken, just reading Bajo Sang in flickering red. Gus wasn't in his usual chair by the door. The place felt hollowed out. I got everyone inside the station's tiny attached diner. It was cold, but it was shelter. I went to find Gus to pay for the fuel. The door to the back storage room was ajar. I called his name, pushed it open. The room was empty, but on the dusty concrete floor, there were footprints. Not Gus's work boots. These were long, narrow, with 3 distinct toe marks and a dragging heel. They were fresh, and they led to the base of the far wall, and then went up. My eyes followed the trail up the cinder block, over the ceiling tiles, and across to a broken ventilation grate in the corner. That's when the smell hit me. Not the dry lizard smell. This was worse. Sweet and cloying, like overripe fruit and burnt hair. It was the smell of something changing, of biology gone rancid. I backed out, heart hammering. I told the passengers we had a mechanical issue, to stay put, that I was going to check the engine. I needed to think. I stepped back outside into the biting wind. The blizzard was starting, flakes whipping horizontal. Across the road, in the empty field, I saw a figure. It was silhouetted against the last bruised green strip of twilight on the horizon. It was tall, impossibly thin, and it was shuddering, twitching, as if its bones were liquid, rearranging under the skin. Its outline blurred, like a bad TV signal. Then it turned. It had no face I could discern, just a dark oval. But I felt its attention lock onto me, onto the warm bus, onto the station full of living, breathing heat. It took a step forward, and its leg didn't bend right. It unfolded, jointed in too many places. A sound came from the station roof behind me. A scrape, a dragging thump. I looked up. Clinging to the edge of the roof, upside down like a gigantic insect, was another one. This one had more definition. I saw leathery skin, a elongated head that swiveled 180 degrees to look down at me, and eyes that glowed with a faint, internal green bioluminescence. Its mouth was a lipless gash. It wasn't just one. They were converging. The town wasn't a stop. It was a trap, a feeding ground. I acted on pure instinct. I ran back inside, slammed the door, and threw the deadbolt, a pathetic gesture. I stood before my passengers, these tired people trusting me to get them home. I looked at their faces. I made a choice. Everyone. I barked, using my command voice. Back on the bus. Now, leave your bags. Run. They saw the terror in my eyes. They moved. We stampeded out the door, into the stinging snow. I didn't look at the roof. I didn't look at the field. I herded them onto the bus, counted heads, and slid into the driver's seat. My hands were ice. As I cranked the engine, I glanced in the oversized rearview mirror. In the diner window we'd just fled, a face was pressed against the glass. It was Gus's face, but his eyes were those same solid, glowing green orbs. And he was smiling, a smile too wide, showing too many needle teeth. He lifted a hand and gave a slow, mocking wave goodbye. I drove that bus through that blizzard like the devil himself was on our bumper. I didn't stop until we hit the first lights of Albuquerque. I filed no report. What would I say? I still drive the Nightbird, but I never stop at Bajo Sangre. Gus is gone. The pump is dry. Sometimes, on the radio, between stations, I'll hear a burst of static that sounds like clicking or a distorted, weeping whisper. I change the frequency. I keep my eyes on the road, because I know some places on the map aren't places anymore. They're lures. And some things don't just wear skin, they wear whole towns. 5 roads, 5 witnesses, a trucker, a nurse, an engineer, a soldier, and a driver. Their worlds, their professions could not be more different. Yet their experiences converge on the same terrifying axis. The encounter with an intelligence that is alien yet intimate, predatory yet patient, that wears the world around us as a disguise. Thomas saw the observer on the desert road. Mara witnessed the replica on the porch. Leo was counted by the census taker in the deep places. Reyes was assessed by the patrol in the canyon. Anya discovered the lure that wears a whole town. These are not mindless monsters. They are entities of strategy. They mimic voices to provoke. They mark territory with tallies. They silence dogs and wear familiar faces. They operate with a purpose that remains infuriatingly, terrifyingly opaque to us. This is what chills me the most. It's not the claws, or the eyes, or the smell, though those are horrors enough. It's the cognition, the intent. We are not just food to them. We are subjects of study, pieces on a board we cannot see. These stories emerge from the liminal spaces, the lonely roads, the silent woods, the forgotten tunnels, the dying towns. Places where the hum of modern life fades to a whisper and older, darker frequencies become audible. They remind us that the world is not fully charted, that there are still blank spots on the map, and in those blank spots, things are making marks of their own. If you have a story, an experience that haunts the edges of your understanding, we invite you to share it in the comments below. Your account could be the thread that connects another fractured testimony. Help us piece together the true shape of what walks in the shadows. If you found yourself holding your breath tonight, if these accounts lingered in the silence after they were told, then you understand the mission of this channel. Please show your support. Like this video, subscribe to Nightbound Bloodline, and hit the notification bell. We are your chroniclers in the dark, gathering testimonies from the edge of the known. Thank you for listening, for bearing witness. Remember, the world is deeper, darker, and far more inhabited than you have been led to believe. This has been Nightbound Bloodline. Until next time, sleep with one eye open.